Hey everybody, it's week 2. So this week we are going to start our cardigan series. And what's really cool about this series is the last one we did our pullover, which was pretty cool, where you only had the seam up the side. This week, or this series, we're going to actually make the 3-piece cardigan. So we'll have a front or 2 fronts and a back. And then you have the sleeves. I know that sounds like 5 pieces. I'm crazy. But actually it's more like 6 because you'll have a button band too. So I've come up with this cool, simple cardigan pattern so that you can incorporate any pattern work you want to do. So if you're really into something lacy, or if you're really into like a cable type style, this will show you how to incorporate that into a cardigan that you want to make. So last one we did something kind of simple. We did like a simple crochet. It was like a 2-stitch repeat. This time we're going to kind of follow a chart and do something a little more complicated. So follow along with me. If you don't want to do something complicated, just go ahead and do a stockinette. But if you want to follow along with me and do what I'm doing a lacy scallop, I believe, lacy scallop wave or something like that. I'll show you the pattern in a second. So first and foremost, I wanted to remind you about how we start any sweater. We are going to measure ourselves. So I have my measurements that I did from the last time we did a sweater. Let me just find it here. I did it in a very complicated fashion. I drew the person out. I came up with a measurement for everything. I came up with a measurement for the shoulder, the length of the sleeve. I came up with a measurement here for this length and a measurement across. So really what we want to do is to get our measurements for our sweater, we want to, and if we're going to follow something a little more standardized instead of something we come up with 100% ourselves, like the last time we did a sweater, we are going to follow a more standard set. So, but what is going to be the most important is we're going to do 2 measurements, and these, well, 3. We're going to do 3 measurements, and these 3 measurements are what's going to help you the most. So if you don't have these measurements, you're not going to be able to create a sweater that's personalized for you. You could follow a measurement like a medium or a small, and those are kind of their own standards. Like I believe a medium can fit like a size 6 to a size 10, and then like a large is a size 10 to like 14 or 16. And a small is like 0 to, well, that's extra small, sorry. Extra small is like 0 to, I started with medium because that's my size. So a small is more like a size 2 to a size like 6. And a size extra small is like a 0 to size 2. Everybody's different. Not everyone comes in the same package. So you don't have to size people by a size small or a size extra large or a size medium. It's fine. So that's why we're doing these measurements. So the 3 measurements we have to do. We have to measure, we're going to go by some standard measurements, but the 3 measurements that you can't move on without. First, you got to start with, you're going to go to your widest point, or at least as wide down here, past your waist, below your waist, that your sweater is going to go down to. Our standard measurement that we're not going to bother measuring is we're going to make this like about 10 inches from the armpit. So that's, see right here, that's actually where my sweater hits. And I'd like to say that I designed this sweater myself, but I didn't. It's a sweater by Petite Knit. It's called what's it called? Sunday sweater, I think is what it's called. It's a mohair sweater pattern, and it's all in stockinette. So that's the standard length for a sweater, is about 10 inches from the armpit. We're not going to deviate from that. So that's what I'm going to do. So our first measurement, okay, sorry, I know that I kind of told you, but our first measurement, if you can't figure it out, you can measure the hips down here. I don't have my hips down here, or you can measure 10 inches down from the armpit. And just see with my tape measure, I got my tape measure at Joann's to replace my other tape measure I broke in the last video. So I'm gonna measure myself across. And my measurement is like 40 inches, 42 around. And that's a little less than my hip measurement, but I know I'm not going any further than that. So 42 inches, okay? That's me. You're probably something else. Or we could be exactly the same, and then you could follow along with me and do the exact same amount of stitches and everything. Exactly the same. Wouldn't that be awesome? Okay, so you got that down. And I recommend you write these down. So your first measurement is your hip, or the lowest hip type measurement. It's around. It's not your waist. It's what's around. So next, we want to measure our bust. This is important because when you measure your bust, some people, their hips are wider. Some people, their bust line's wider. So you want to accommodate the widest part of you. So if you're not doing shaping, and that's fine, I'm not going to do shaping with this. I didn't do shaping with my last one, but the fact of it is if the sweater is close to your measurements, you don't really need it. So it does this magic thing where when you measure correctly to your size, it looks like it's made for you because it is. You end up looking a lot better than if you had bought that sweater from TJ Maxx or, I don't know, what, Old Navy. So, okay, so we're going to measure around our bust line. Remember, we're not, I'm doing this all by myself, so, okay. Remember, we're kind of doing it like we did it before. We're not pulling super tight across the bust. We're not trying to prove anything. We're also not trying to be super loose. See, I'm doing it here. I'm going to come this way. I'm going across. It's like measuring yourself for a bra. I'm measuring myself across the widest point. So I've got like 40, 41, okay? And you want to make sure it's not twisted. This is like a great point where if you had a buddy or a partner, to have them measure you. So you don't want the measuring tape to be up here, and you don't want it to be down here. You're measuring across, like straight across. And when in doubt, give yourself the extra inch. I'm like 41, 42. Okay? So I did my two measurements. So if you remember, and I'm not doing my third one just yet. If you remember your first measurement and your second measurement, which is more? Okay? It's fine if your bust measurement is more. Lucky you. But for me, my hip measurement, or like the measurement down here, that it is the first measurement is wider for me, but technically by like 1 inch. So we're going to note both of those measurements. This is important too. If you are making a sweater like this for a man, you only have to make one measurement between these two, and that's the widest point measurement. So for men, usually it's somewhere like in the tummy. Men, for the most part, I'm just generalizing, they're not all the same either. For the most part, men, their middle point where they're most wide is the belly, across the belly button, or if they work out, it's gonna, and they're like really work out. It's gonna be up here. You never know. All right. So then what you do is once you have those two measurements, you've written them down. I have them down here. I have everything here. Unfortunately, I know everything. We're now going to do the next most important part, which is the sleeve. So the sleeve is part of your sweater set. And oh, let me keep this down. There is a standard measurement for sleeve length too. So I believe it's about like 19 inches, 17 to 19. So if I measured from my shoulder, where my shoulder is, all the way to my wrist, and great time to have a buddy. See how I measure? See me measure? Okay, if I bring it down here, I've got actually 20 inches. I could have gone down a little bit more on the shoulder, probably more like here. 20 inches is pretty, 20 to 19 inches, pretty standard. My sleeves are actually a little bit long here. So if you want something that's more like here, you're 19 to 17 inches. It's normal. That's our standard measurement. So don't worry about that. Normal stuff. If your arms are shorter than that or longer than that, you can always adjust. That's what's nice about making your own sweater pattern. I know this is really tedious, guys, and I'll list the measurements at the end again. So this is our last and third measurement. We're just going to measure around the armpit. This is important because it tells us how far we're going to go this way too on the front and back of our sweater. So you can only get up to this point, but you can't do this point of the middle of your sweater without knowing how wide your arm needs to be. And that's important. And I know it doesn't seem like it, and there are some standard measurements for sleeves, but do you ever feel like your arms are just a little wider than a sleeve and you have to size up because the sweater doesn't, give you any kind of room to breathe? I mean, is there anything worse than a sweater that chokes your arms? Or what if you have like arms that just aren't as big as the sweater? You need like the sweater and say a size small, and you have extra small size arms, like diameter. That's a bummer too, because it makes your sleeve look so much more untailored. So that's why this is important. I've given you a multitude of reasons. So you measure your arm at your widest point. Always good to have a buddy, but if you're like me and you don't have one right now, it's important. So I'm doing it while I'm flexing. So I've got like 13 inches around, okay? Some of you might be more like 14, or some of you might be more like 10. I don't know. Sorry, my measuring tape. But I mean, there are a lot more measurements you can do. You can measure your wrist. You can, don't need that. Okay. So let's just recap. So 3 measurements you need. I know I talked about this for a long time. You need your waist, not your waist, sorry, the widest part of your body below your waist. So all the way around below your waist. Second measurement you need, your bust measurement. So the widest part of your bust all the way around. And then lastly, the third measurement that you need is the width of your upper arm. This is the widest part of your arm, and you need that to be able to determine how big to make your sweater sleeve and how much of an area here you should allow yourself to accommodate your arms. Okay, so now you have those 3 measurements. You'd have them here measured 1, 2, or 1, 2, 3, and now you can start. And I'll tell you how we'll get into that. Okay guys, I know I went on for a long time about how to measure yourself, and I know a lot of you have seen the first video, so please disregard. If you know how to measure yourself, that's great. I'm going to show you the first steps of what we do. So this, if you want to be on track with me for the first week, you're going to make a gauge swatch. So first of all, if we're going to make this cardigan, unless you're making it and stocking it or some really easy like rib stitch, completely fine. I'm there with you. We're going to be making it in something more complicated. So I have this beautiful knit stitch dictionary by Debbie Tomkeys, and I'm going to pick one of the stitches out of here to make a sweater. So I recommend for anybody who loves to knit to go ahead and get a knit pattern directory like one of these. This one's quite nice. So I'm going to pick something that's going to take me a little bit more than just like 2 stitch repeats, like a knit or a purl, like you would see here. If you look at these, they have a chart down here, and see this red box here indicates the repeating part of the pattern. So another way to tell too is if you look at the pattern here, it'll say it's a multiple of 4 stitches. So that means it repeats 4 times, or not repeats 4 times. Wow. You only have 4 stitches in that repeat. So after your 4 stitches, you'll repeat that same exact stitch from the first stitch and keep going over and over again, 1 through 4. But what I'm going to do is I've already picked what I'm doing. I'm making something that repeats over 15 stitches. So I recommend for the sweater something kind of simple, maybe something like that, or something even kind of lacy. I'm picking probably something harder than most people would pick, and I wouldn't recommend that you pick something harder than me, but you can if you want to. It's completely fine. So I'm working actually on this pattern, the lacy stockinette scallops pattern, and it is actually a pattern that I've sent to all of you before. So what this pattern is it's a multiple of 15 stitches plus 2. Before you can even start your gauge swatch, you have to pick out your yarn and you have to pick out your needles. So I know I'm going to do this, but I don't know what I'm going to do it with yet, okay? And I'll go through the pattern with you in a minute. I recommend when you're making a sweater for the first time or a cardigan, and this cardigan is going to have buttons, so it's going to be fun too. This cardigan, I'm recommending that you don't get your buttons first. A lot of people will. What I am doing is I'm picking a yarn from Michaels that I know I can get easily, and I am picking an acrylic yarn because I'm okay with that. I kind of want something easy going, so I've picked an easy going yarn that's accessible for everybody. So if you want to follow along with me, I will put a link for the yarn in the description of the video, and then I think I'll also segue pretty soon. I'll segue to put the yarn right here. So I'm going to pause the video here to show you a picture of the yarn that I'm using from the website. Okay, so this is the yarn I'm using. I don't have the label, so that's why I've shown you the picture of the yarn with the label. This is a size 3 to 4 weight yarn. It's pretty, I think it's just a turquoise color. It's pretty standard. You could use a red heart yarn, you could use a Cardigan yarn. Go ahead, whatever works for you. If you want to use cotton, go ahead. Just use whatever you would like to use. This is not a pattern though that I think you should use like an extra bulky yarn or a spider web, like a cobweb lace work. I would pick something just kind of easy like this. So size 3, size 4, baby weight's good. Aran weight is good too. So I made this before, and I made it with a baby weight yarn in a size 7 needle. And I found that even though I do like the edge here, I wasn't quite sure if that's the effect I wanted to get with the edge of my sweater. Most of the time, sweater edges, you'll have to determine this for yourself. Sweater edges are going to be probably like a garter row or like seed stitch or a rib. It's whatever you want it to be, really. If you want like more shaping at the bottom, I would do several inches of rib. That would be beautiful. But for my sweater, I'm choosing something lacy. So here's my swatch. I made a big one too, so don't freak out if yours is not as big as mine. I also included a couple of the rows, like 3 rows of garter, just to get an idea. And I repeated the pattern 3 times. When in doubt, it's nice to have a swatch that's large, because if you start with a one size one, even if this is 4 inches by 4 inches, you can get a pretty good idea of how well it stretches and what it looks like, especially if you're trying out an edge. See, my edge here is so much less pointy than this edge, but I kind of like it. I like how kind of loose, it's like a little more cutesy instead of severe. So I kind of like that scallop. So this is the kind of sweater that I am going to make. You don't have to make a swatch that large, but let me help you read through this. Okay, so I know, for instance, this is really kind of scary to you, especially if you've only made stockinette sweaters before. Let's just do a little work, and I promise you this will get easier. So, for instance, if this is in a book, I really recommend you write this down somewhere else, the pattern, or copy this. Like, take your copier or take a picture of it with your phone, somewhere you can look at it where you don't have to access it by constantly opening a book. Alright, so the first thing we have to figure out with this pattern is you would first read through it, or look, if you're good with symbols, you would read through the instructions here, and I know they're kind of small, and then maybe look through the symbols here and see if you know everything that's written down. Because if you don't know the instructions, or if you come across something that's really kind of tricky, I wouldn't recommend doing that for your first cardigan. If you make a mistake, that'll really throw you off and it'll kind of upset you. I picked something I know I can do because I know what a yarn over is, and I know what a slip knit pass over is. So hint 2, this sometimes is called SKP, or it's SKP O or SKP over, not always standard. So yes, I know what a knit 2 together is. I can do this. So if you know this, you don't have to be able to read the chart, but being able to read the chart's always nice. So this for instance, this 0 or the little circle is a yarn over. This is a knit 2 together, the dash that goes from the upper right hand corner down to the left hand corner, and the little caret that faces to the left is the SKP. So that's how you know. So that's that repeating pattern. And this pattern is 15 stitches by 10 rows. So that's how much you know. That's how you know how you'll be repeating it. So you're going to be doing sections of 15. So this is kind of like a very heady chapter or like video. It's not very fun probably to watch, but this is how you kind of set yourself up. And sweater making is a lot of math. So let's look into this for a second. We're going to use this as the example. So let's see. It says multiple stitches is 15 plus 2. So if you did one of these, it would be the 15 here, and then you'd add 2 stitches. So that would be 17. So if you were going to do a repeat of this pattern, so you have 2 of these next to each other, it would be 15 plus 15 because you've got these 2, and then you add 2, so that's 32. And then if you were going to do 3, which is what I did, you would add 15 plus 15 plus 15, so that would be 45, and then you'd add 2 to that. So the 2 never changes, okay? And that's what that means, is it's a multiple of 15 stitches plus 2. So the 45 plus 2 is 47. So does that make sense? We can try that with another pattern. Let's look at this. This one's easy. This is always 36, so if you doubled your snowflake pattern, you would have 36 plus 36 is, oh gosh, 72. Here's another one. This cat eyes pattern is a multiple of 12 plus 9. So if you were going to repeat the pattern twice, this little pattern here, that's what they're using. You're going to repeat this pattern twice. Let's say it's 24. Now we have to add 9 stitches onto the edge. So if it's 24 plus 9, that's, what is that, 33? Yeah. So that would be 33 stitches. If it's 12 plus 9, that's 21 stitches. So that's just a lot of math. You just keep doing it. Okay? Let's try another one. See, I kind of recommend you do one of these where you only have like a small amount of stitches. If you want to do something like that, that's fine. Whatever you want to do, just follow along. So, okay. One more. We'll do one more. So, if we were doing this one, for example, this flame chevron, it's a multiple of 7 plus 2. So I'm going to do, for the back of my cardigan, I've measured it out, and I've figured out that I need, 5 repeats of 7. So I'm going to do, I probably need a lot more than that. I need more like 8 repeats of 7. So 7 times 8, or 7 plus 7, 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 is 56. And then you add 2, so that's 58 stitches that you would need for the whole back piece. Okay, I think that makes sense. I know that sounds kind of complicated. All right, so then let's look at this. So this one's my my gauge swatch. So for next week, you have to make a gauge swatch if you're following along and making your own cardi, okay? I made a bigger piece on purpose because I've already made this piece as a 2 repeat, so I tried the 3 repeat. what I need to do is I need to measure this out so I know how many inches this is. So 3 repeat is 11 inches. That's pretty good. Considering that my whole width is like about 42 maybe, or 41, and if I divided that in half, I would be, where would I be? 41 divided in half, that would be about 20 inches. So if one side of my cardi was about 11, I'm doing really well. Okay? So I might even just do this much for one side of my cardi, which is awesome. Because guys, your now gauge swatch is a prime example of, you know, the whole side of a cardigan. So this is like side 1. So this could also be side 2. You never know. Alrighty. So that's pretty great for me. I'm pretty excited about that. It's actually kind of closer to 12, but let's not split hairs on this. Then too, when you measure the height of it, I've got 3 repeats of 10 here. So you can tell that's 1 repeat, 2 repeat, 3. Okay. I'm going to go from my, I'm not going to measure from down here. You know why? Because this is my border and I was trying something out. So this actually isn't part of my pattern. I'm going to measure this from the bottom of this pattern. So from here to here, so I want to get to the end, so that's 5 roughly. We're trying not to stretch this out, and I'm kind of stretching it a little, so it's 5 inches. So a 3 repeat of my pattern, so this is 30 rows that way. So if I were going to divide it, I would say about 6 rows is an inch, right? No, that's like an inch and a half. So that's 30 rows, divide by 4. So I tell you, this takes a lot of work, and it's important to write this stuff down. So if you're following along with me, 3 repeats with a size 8 needle with this Aran weight yarn, or medium weight, medium or sport. I don't know. It'll have the link to the yarn. Is about what? This. And so I like the weight of it too. That's what's important, is you look at the weight of your sweater. You don't, if you live here in Southern California like me, you don't want it too heavy because you want to be able to wear it. Okay. I never told you how many stitches that was per inch. So if you take 30, divide it by 4, you're probably around 7 to 8 rows. So it takes a lot of math. You can always use your calculator while you're doing this. I'm doing this in my head, so if I did it wrong, please tell me. But that's pretty easy. So if I'm doing that, okay, let's figure out, and I know this is tedious, let's figure out how to start our back. Okay, we're almost done, guys. I know you're thinking, I just want to make this gauge swatch. I don't want to think about anything else just yet. Go ahead and make the gauge swatch. It's okay. But I'm starting you off with instructions on how to create the measurements and how to get yourself ready when you need to be ready. Okay, so let's measure how many. So roughly you could take this and measure and see how big your pattern is. So this is one side of the pattern and this is the other side. Roughly it's about 5 inches, a little bit under, like this much. So 5 inches by 5 inches, 5 inches makes the width of one of these, okay? So if you are going across, and let's say you're going, and you want 20 inches worth of, let's see. Yeah, you want like 20 inches worth of, oh, here we go. It's actually more like 4. I was gonna say that's kind of wide. I was measuring a little oddly. Okay, so it's 4. I'm sorry about that. Let's try it with the other side too. Yeah, it's 4. Sorry, you guys. So 4. I'll measure twice. What was it? Measure twice, cut once, or something like that. So 4 inches is a repeat of your pattern. So taking that into account, we don't want to break our pattern in half, okay? We want to just continue. Taking that into account, let's say we're doing 25 inches across the back. What gets us closest there? So that'll be 24, or 6. It'll go into 4 6 times. So we're an inch off, okay? That's where we have to decide whether we want to stretch this wider or incorporate a little bit more room in your pattern. So if you're only an inch off, I would suggest actually just adding a couple stitches and stocking to each side. So then you have a little bit more wiggle room here. So instead of having the 2 at the edges, you would have 6 repeats of your pattern in the middle, and you would have maybe 6 stocking on this side, 6 stocking on this side, and then you'd be complete. I know that feels like cheating, but that is really the way designers come up with their patterns. Let's say you are going to do your 20 inches across. So you've got your pattern with the 4. So if you measure it 20 inches across is 5 repeats of your pattern. It goes in perfectly. Let's say you're 13. 13, or let's say you're 13 stitches. Or inches, sorry. 13 inches across the back. So what would that be? You want to go to your nearest one, which is 12, okay? So now you're 1 inch off. Just add a couple stitches of stockinette to the side. Or if you're in a pattern that doesn't call for something like that, go up 1 more size. If you want your cardi to be a little bit bigger, it's completely fine. You can just go up 1 more pattern repeat. It's completely fine. So it really just depends on you. This is going to be 1 side for me. So 3 repeats of the pattern. I haven't measured how many I'm going to do across the back. I think it's going to be like, what is it? 22 maybe across. So I'm going to go 22 divided by 4 is 5, right? So 22 divided by 4 is 5. And then I have 2 extra inches that I need. So I'm probably going to end up adding just a couple stitches and stockinette to the side. So maybe 2 or 3 extra stitches on either side of that. So, I don't know if you hear the sirens, but I hear them. So that's the way we would be working on that. So guys, next week, do your gauge swatch. I actually recommend you do something like this so you can see the pattern out in a couple times. Just go start like a little bit of an edge here and see if you like it. Like, I actually like how my chevron looks. It looks a little more, a little less pointy, a little more scallopy. So I kind of like this look. So guys, go ahead and try it out. That's your assignment, gauge swatch. Otherwise, if you're not making the sweater, feel free to just watch and enjoy what you're learning. Okay guys, I know that this week is kind of a lot like when we did our pullover sweater technique together, but there are a lot of new elements we've incorporated too, which also are quite new to the process if you're completely new to making a sweater. So this is your self-designed cardi sweater that we're going to put together in a pattern that you want to do. And it can be as hard or as easy as you want it to be. So I'm just here to give you the guidelines. So make sure if you're working on this sweater, stay in communication with me so I can help you out along the way and give you advice. Otherwise, go ahead and just follow along with me if you want. Do the same exact thing I'm doing. If you want it, I've sent out the pattern before, that lacy scallop chevron pattern. That's one from one of our previous assignments that I had you guys try out. So you could do any of the patterns that I've sent to you before if you wanted to, or new ones if you want. That's what makes this cardigan so great. And go ahead and buy buttons if you want to, but you might find out that when you're getting there and almost done with your sweater, you might not want the buttons that you started out with. I know I usually don't. So go ahead, make the gauge swatch, and I'll see you next week. Thanks.